Hey, what's up guys and gals? My name is Rick9G. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about I Love Lucy. More specifically about an episode called Lucy Has Her Eyes Examined. It's from season 3. It's one of my favorite episodes of all time of I Love Lucy. I would even say top 10. And something that I noticed about it is that her shoe flies off during one of the dances with Arthur King Cat Walsh, her dance instructor. And I want to go into the details of why this is important in my mind and whether this happened on purpose or was it accidental. I will of course give you my thoughts, my ideas, and I want to hear your ideas and thoughts down in the comments below because I think it's pretty intriguing and lets us into the mind of the genius that is Lucille Ball. Now on my channel, I love to deep dive into these classic TV shows, and I Love Lucy is one of my absolute favorites. So as I mentioned, this is from season 3, Lucy Has Her Eyes Examined. And let me go through the plot in detail because I think it'll rather explain what's happening with the shoe. It may be something that you may not have even noticed, and upon closer inspection, which is something that I do, it's more noticeable, of course. So in this episode, we have one of Ricky's friends going back a long time, and he comes to visit him at the club. His name is Bill Parker. Now he's a producer, he's putting on a show. All of that is in Variety, and the Mertzes find out about this, that he's in town, and Ricky decides to bring him home to Lucy and the gang. However, they decide to change his name so that the gang doesn't realize that he's super popular and trying to get in on the act, as they always do. Now they find out who he is, and behind Ricky's back they perform in front of him, and after a little bit of while and some funny moments, we see that Bill Parker says, hey, yeah, you can go to the club, you can be in the show. Ricky reluctantly says, okay, we can do that, and they put on an old-timey jitterbug style type show. Now Lucy has to learn this dance, but she doesn't know it, so she gets help from this man named Arthur King Cat Walsh. He's a dance instructor. The Mertzes as well, they learn to dance for the actual show. Now this man, Arthur King Cat Walsh, he's pretty funny. He has a lot of cool funny lines with Fred Mertz, especially when he comes in. He calls him the crazy dancing bear, and then Fred says, coolest? No, that's the hottest. It's one of my favorite lines probably in this entire episode. Now getting back to the part where Lucy and Arthur King Cat Walsh are actually dancing, this is where the big moment happens. He's teaching her the jitterbug, all these dance moves, and here is where all the fun begins. He grabs her from behind by the waist, and then he starts to swish her to his left, to his right, back and forth. Now Lucy's body becomes kind of limped. It makes sense because what he's actually doing is kind of throwing her back and forth. And so in the realm of how this would actually happen, that's how it would be. Of course, this was all rehearsed. It was in the script and so forth. But actually watching this before, as I mentioned, I noticed that a shoe came off. All highlighted over here, of course, in the DVD version, and just with a high quality video, it's a lot easier to see versus something in syndication or may have even been cut for commercials. So I thought, let me come up with the ideas as to why this was actually probably planned or maybe not planned. So planned versus not planned. Now at first inspection, I thought, well, this is not planned. This is just something that happened on the fly. And why am I pointing so much attention to this? Well, because the audience is laughing when all this is happening, and when the shoe flies off, everyone laughs even harder. So I thought, well, of course this was a mistake, this was not planned, but then they just kind of kept it in and it made everything more funny. So here are my thoughts, my evidence for saying that this was accidental. Number one, well, because it's organic, how he's moving Lucy's body back and forth and her limbs being all flippity-floppity. It's a very organic thing to do. If you're moved that violently, yes, your shoe would probably organically fly off. Number two, sometimes unplanned funny things happen, and especially when they happen in comedy, you have to milk them. You have to keep them going, and that is something that I think is absolutely amazing. Now, number three, this for me was very important, and that is Lucy's movements. Her movements are encouraging this to happen. They're very floppy, they're very violent, one side toward the other. Of course, the movements itself were planned, but I'm focusing on the shoe itself. And the movements encourage this to happen. So all of this evidence to me is letting me know that this was probably accidental. And then finally, the last thing is that only one shoe came off, right? That would make sense that, well, it wasn't planned, boom, one shoe accidentally came off, and so forth. But then as I watched the clip over and over and over again, my mind was changed. Now, as I mentioned, I was really surprised that my mind actually changed after watching this clip over and over again. Now, you don't have to agree with me, but I think that this is very strong evidence that this was actually planned, that they actually wanted to do this. This was all part of the organized plan of the episode. And I start with number one, and that is because I Love Lucy, in case you didn't know, was very focused on rehearsing. They would over-rehearse every single episode. Every single movement was pretty much down to the T. They would focus on everything. Lucy would focus on her lip movements, her eye movements, and she would encourage everyone to do the same. So with constant rehearsal, they would have known that it would have been possible for a shoe to fly off. It would have been actually natural. It probably happened during the rehearsals, and they thought, wow, this is really cool. Why don't we actually do this for the show? Why don't we plan for this to happen? Now, number two, everything itself, it kind of goes with number one, was planned. Nothing was left to air on I Love Lucy. In fact, they did many things to make sure that everything went according to plan in the process of the filmmaking. There was no ad-libbing on the show. That is something that I've made many videos on, and that's something that's very important. So even that, it seems like the shoe wouldn't have been ad-lib. Now, number three, Lucy has on these type of shoes which facilitate coming off. These are kind of like slippers in a way. They're almost like dancing shoes. And so if she would have wanted a type of shoe that didn't come off, like if she would have noticed, she would have worn another type of shoe. And so it's almost like she planned to use shoes that were easy to slip off during this dance. Number four, the floppiness of Lucy's arms and legs was on purpose. That was definitely part of the plot, which would only suggest that it would make it easier for her to slingshot her shoe off of her foot. Number five, because it was a funny thing to happen, why not put it in there? I Love Lucy tried to milk every single laugh. Why wouldn't they? So finding out that this would have been funny, they would have done it. And number six, this is what absolutely convinced me that this was planned, and that is, upon closer inspection, after watching this clip many times, not one, but actually two shoes come off. One comes off, and then the other one comes off. It's almost as if that was purposeful. One, okay, you can say accidentally one shoe came off, the other one didn't, and so forth, but both came off. It was almost as if, boom, let's throw one off, let's wait a little bit, boom, the other one to just clinch it. That makes it even funnier in my mind, guys and gals. So what do you think about this moment? As I mentioned, it's a small little moment, but that's what I love to do, focus on these really cool, fun stories. And finding out what you think, you the fans, you the big people who love this show. Let me know down in the comments below. Do you think the shoes, there's two of them coming off, was it purposeful or was it accidental? Don't just say that. Let me know why. I think everyone wants to read and everyone enjoys reading each other's comments. We'll see you next time, guys and gals. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, and most importantly, be hopeful. Thank you so much to my Diamond tier patrons: Citizen Kane 359, Paul T, Ricky, Gary N, David D, Sally N, Yasmin G, and Lori K. If you want to be part of the Patreon family, don't forget to take a look at the description with many exclusives that you can enjoy.